Hello, my name is Ellen, and I'm one of the naturalists out at Severson Dells Nature Center. And today I wanted to talk to you about some of the things that you can do to help reduce the impacts of some of the Earth's natural processes. Wow, that's a real mouthful. And what does it mean? What it means is that the Earth is constantly doing stuff just by being the planet Earth. Just like you are doing things every day that you don't even think about. You breathe, you blink, you swallow, you sleep. These are natural processes for you. What do you think might be a natural process for the Earth? Take a moment, pause the video, and discuss this with your class. So what did you come up with? How about weather? Weather is definitely a natural process that happens here on Earth. Did anyone suggest earthquakes or floods? How about when lightning strikes a tree and starts a fire? These are all really good examples of a natural process that have negative impacts on humans. Some processes, like photosynthesis, there are no negative impacts. As a matter of fact, photosynthesis, a very natural process, is something that we benefit from. It produces the air that we breathe. But others can be problematic. Can you think of something that has happened where you live that has been a natural process of the Earth that has had a negative impact on your family or your community? Pause the video and discuss with your class. We are lucky here in northern Illinois that we don't have too many things that we need to worry about. We get a few earthquakes, but mostly they have been fairly small. And certainly tornadoes are a real concern in severe storms. I think probably the biggest issue that we have is flooding, a result of some of those severe storms. In 2019, our area had a lot of flooding going on. Both the Pecatonica and Sugar Rivers, as well as the Rock River, were in flood stage for a good part of the year, most of the summer and well into the fall. I remember that many of the farmers had a hard time getting crops in the ground because their fields were flooded, and they had a hard time harvesting. Do you remember those floods? How did that impact you, your family, or your community? Pause the video and discuss with your class. One of the things that has led to an increase in flooding in our region and other parts of the world is something that scientists refer to as catastrophic precipitation events. It's a big word, and what it means is we're getting a lot of rain or snow in a short period of time, more than we're used to. And the question is, what is causing this? Scientists have concluded that these large precipitation events, we're going to use their words, are the result of climate change. Perhaps you've heard of climate change. And what climate change refers to is the fact that the overall temperature of our planet is rising. And as it rises, it's having a big impact on all sorts of processes around the entire planet. Our warm weather is becoming warmer, our hots are hotter, the cold weather is becoming colder. When we get rain or snow, we're getting a lot more of it. Or if we don't get rain or snow, those times of drought are lasting a lot longer. So everything is becoming much more extreme. Now, you may be too young yet to have enough experience with the weather and the climate in your area to have really noticed the changes. But people my age and older certainly do remember. I think you should have a conversation with your parents or your grandparents and ask them what the weather was like when they were kids. Did they remember the summers being as hot and as humid as they are today? Or the winters, what were the winters like when they were young compared to what they're like today? I moved to Rockford about 3.5 years ago, and I've been talking to some people in my neighborhood, and I learned that in 2006 and 2007, there were some serious floods in Rockford. What happened is there's a creek that comes through the city. It's called Keith Creek, and over the decades, the land around Keith Creek has been developed. There used to be a lot of fields there. Once upon a time it was all prairie and savanna, so that's going back a ways. But now, today, it's all neighborhoods or roads or shopping areas. And so when you put in all this development, all that soil, all that grass has disappeared and become hard paved surfaces. So when it rains, where is that rain going to go? Where is the water going to go? It hits a hard surface and it just goes across the surface. There's no more soil to soak that up. And this is what has caused flooding in neighborhoods such as mine. As a matter of fact, I have heard stories that it was so bad that people were waiting on top of their houses to be rescued by boats because their house was completely flooded, some all the way up to the second story. That's pretty scary. The good news is there are things that the city can do, the state can do, your neighborhood can do, and even you could do to help reduce the impact of these flooding events. I'd like you to take a moment, pause the video, and brainstorm some ideas with your class of things that you think that you could actually do to help reduce the impacts of flooding in your community. I'm at a home south of Rockford where a gentleman named Tim Lewis planted what we call a rain garden. Rain gardens are a great first step that you can take to control excess water or excessive rain on your property. I will take you on a quick tour to show you what Tim did here. When it rains, all the water that hits the roof comes down through the gutters and down into the drain pipe. As you can see, the drain pipe runs down the edge of the garage and into the ground, where a drain takes it underneath the driveway and into the rain garden. This rain garden is actually quite extensive. I've seen much smaller rain gardens put on smaller properties. Planted with native plants, both grasses and flowering plants and a few shrubs, this rain garden, which is on both sides of the driveway, not only slows down water coming off of the property, but also provides vital habitat for pollinators, both insects and for birds. It is now October, late October, and we still have flowers that are blooming, which are really important for a lot of the insects that are active on these nice sunny days. This grassy ditch is not far from my house. In 2007, this neighborhood was hit with a serious flood from all the rain that was being channeled down the roads from another neighborhood not too far from here. As a result, people were on their roofs and had to be rescued by boat. After that flood, the city started putting in these grassy drain ditches. And what it does is takes the water that was coming down the roads and sends it through these culverts into these grassy ditches. And these get sent on down towards a retainment pond in a park near here, or on down through to the river. Just on the other side of those two culverts is another grassy ditch just like this one. And that collects the water from the street that you can see up on the other side of the rise over there. The water comes through these pipes and then heads down through these two pipes. It crosses the street and comes out on the other side over here. If you were to continue walking down this ditch, you would see that it's no longer a grassy ditch, but it is simply concrete. What effects do you think having just a concrete ditch are going to have on how the water flows through this area? Take a moment and pause this video and discuss it with your class. Now I want you to compare this grassy ditch to the rain garden that we saw at Tim Lewis's house. Again, pause the video and discuss with your class how the movement of water through that rain garden would be different from the movement of water through this grassy ditch, and different from the movement of water through just a concrete ditch. This concrete drainage ditch is not far from my house either. Some parts of my neighborhood drain into a ditch just like this. How do you think the water moves through here when we have a storm? If you answered yes to that question, then you are correct. As we mentioned before, many of our native plants are adapted to being in areas where they get really wet for part of the year, but can also dry out. If you were to picture a rain garden on a really big scale, you would have something called a bioswale. We are here at the Nicholas Conservatory in Rockford, where they have a bioswale as part of their garden system. It runs along their parking lot, and it helps them with water that comes off those parking lots and would normally end up directly in the river. Let's take a look. As you can see, the bioswale at the Nicholas Conservatory is quite extensive. It runs the length of their parking lots. They have special drains set up that channel the water directly into this ditch, which is planted with native plants. As the water comes in, the stems and leaves of the plants slow down the flow, and the roots slowly soak up that water. Later, the roots and the plants release that water back into the environment at a much slower rate, thus preventing flooding. Another benefit of the bioswale is that it also helps to remove pollutants from the environment. When you look at any driveway or road or parking lot, I'm sure you've seen many stains on it. And these are caused by cars that have various leaks. Maybe they're oil, maybe they're antifreeze. And these chemicals, when it rains, get washed into the environment. If you have a bioswale or a rain garden installed next to these paved surfaces, when it rains, the water collects there, and all those chemicals get concentrated in that bioswale, where the plants can actually remove some of them from the water, and later on, when the water is released back into the environment, those chemicals are no longer there. In this case, that would be the Rock River. So what did you come up with? When I ask myself this question, I find there are several other benefits. Not only would bioswales and rain gardens help with flooding in our communities, but they also beautify the area with the flowers as they bloom. And in turn, those flowers provide an important food source for our native pollinators, many of which are struggling to survive today. Additionally, these areas would not have to be mowed every week. And that's going to save your community money. And it will also cut down on both air and noise pollution, which I think is something everybody can get behind. So really, it's a win-win, win-win-win situation. I love the idea that something as simple as a garden can make a difference in how we can handle some of the challenges that nature throws at us. And this is something that each of you and your families can do. I hope you'll consider some rain garden projects at your home, or a bioswale at your school. Or maybe you'll talk to your community leaders about the benefits of bioswales throughout the region. We may not be able to stop climate change right now, but we can do something to help ease some of the effects that climate change is throwing our way, such as flooding. Thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to hearing what projects you and your classmates have come up with.